The following video documents the experience of developing an evaluation tool with 2 aina-based programs on the island of Oahu. The use of video, with its ability to capture what is often lost in written word, is intended to provide a more experiential articulation of the cultural processes and perspectives of aina-based programs. Designed to complement the handbook, the video may be used to support the work of community-based program developers, evaluators, and funders. Over the course of a year, efforts were made to develop a process-based tool which would lend to more effective and accurate evaluation of aina-based programs. What emerged are ongoing, culturally resonant practices that are rigorous, adaptable, and inclusive of many perspectives and ways of collecting data. The resultant product, Strengths Enhancing Evaluation Research, aims to provide a truer representation of aina-based program processes and thereby expand their potential and effectiveness.
One of the critical concerns that Indigenous peoples have about research and about evaluation in particular is that there doesn't seem to be an opportunity for their voices to be heard for the essence of the program. Most evaluations focus on data and evidence, but there's a lot more to it than that when it comes to working with people and communities. And obviously it's the same with other cultures, I guess, not just with Indigenous, but there's a need to reflect the voices more of people.
And I think one thing about Indigenous evaluation especially is that we put it in a context of culture and place. And that will tell the story behind the numbers. When you cut off the context of culture and place, even language, background history, you're changing the story that you're telling people.
Now we're working with the Consuelo Foundation and for myself also the Hau'oli Mauloa Foundation, and I really give these foundations credit for saying, okay, well, let's look at the evaluation process and does it really fit? And that's really valuable. Even as the foundation is asking that question, I don't think they've realized what the answer is. You know, I don't think they've realized that the answer is way far away from the logic model theory of change, linear template that they're accustomed to. It's not just changing the questions, it's changing the entire template, it's changing the entire process.
The process of SEER is a general framework for approaching aina-based programs. It's a general framework for engaging, becoming a guest, and then being respectful all the time throughout the process, making sure that that researchers don't come in acting like they have all the answers, because in fact the experts are the community program developers and providers. Therefore, the tools that actually are developed are unique to or customized by those individuals who run the programs.
Kamale is an educational nonprofit that services families in Ko'olauloa, families with young children. And the focus of our program is a family and child interaction called Hualanapua.
E ulu ulu, e panimae, me ka ha'ahae. A ha'aha kokulala, a ahonui ala nakila. And
one of the tools that we use in Ho'olanapua is the Punalu'u Discovery Garden. And it's about 1.5 acres of formerly dump lands that we have tried to bring back to life through native plants and some careful planning. And we bring all of the families in the program out here every Friday. And we've tried to create a natural environment for kids to explore and discover and learn with an adult member of their family.
This is Ho'olu'aina. The name of our project is Ho'olu'aina, to grow land. We're part of Kokua Kalihi Valley, which is a comprehensive family services. Here at Ho'olu'aina, we have 4 program areas. We have Lohe'aina, listening to the land, which is our Wahipana and Mo'olelo, revitalizing ancient sites and ancient stories. We have Koa'aina, which is our native reforestation project, revitalizing the Koa Mesic Forest here in Kalihi. We have our Mahi'aina program, which is our community food production program, where elders and children create food for a sustainable food system in Kalihi. And our last area is Hoa'aina, sharing the land in friendship. That's our community engagement program. The most exciting thing for me to see as an educator when I see the kids come, they're afraid to get dirty, they're like, yeah, and so we get them a big pile of compost and we get them the sifters and they go to town. In 10 minutes they got a wheelbarrow full of the stuff they didn't want to touch at first, and then they're like, don't spill it. So in 10 minutes they go from I'm afraid of dirt to I value dirt. And it's metaphoric, but I think that's a seed that can last for a long time. And that idea of growing land, that you're actually growing healthy land, but you're growing because of that relationship too.
If you're going to be aware on the land, you have to be aware with people too. And you should be able to go back and forth between the natural world and the human world. I mean, if you're a successful human being, you should be able to migrate that. So the things that you learn in the garden, the small little things, if you're aware and you understand it, you're going to apply it to the human world. And when you get out into the land and you're working with the land, I mean, the land is what it is. You can't force it to change, just like you can't force people to change.
We are all indigenous to some place, that at some point in our genealogies, every person came from a land-based culture. And it might be that your particular group of people, your particular family, has come away from their land-based culture a long time ago. That doesn't mean that you're not indigenous. That doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to understand the value of relating to humans on a cultural level, on a land level. And that's what we want people to experience here, and that's what aina-based, culture-based programming is helping to get children especially, but humans in general, to remember that part of themselves that doesn't see the land as separate from themselves.
The core elements of SEER involve a process of engagement, and that really means that we are asking permission to become guests and hoping not only to be invited, but be invited to develop a relationship with those individuals.
Well, our first meetings, our first invitations to meet with Nākamale and Ho'olu'aina were really about building a sense of who we are and who they are. So we weren't really focused on questions about the program. We were really introducing ourselves.
This then takes at least 2 or 3 sessions. It involves us figuring out what they want to do, what their goals are, what their expectations are, and how we can work together.
Everything has a meaning. There's no such thing as it doesn't mean anything. And when I remember Paula, I was trying to get to know her, and we were driving around the property looking at the various areas where we conduct program. And I remember Paula telling me at the very end of the conversation, about her family from Molokai. And to be honest with you, that was the exact minute I was sitched. And I think it was because I realized that Paula was going to know what it was like to live in a rural area that was very family-based and land-based, and the community supported itself. And I think it was that I could trust Paula to understand that because I knew her background.
You show up with yourself. If you show up as who you are, then the person that you're interviewing, the person that you're sharing stories with, is free to be who they are too. And you can respect each other. And at that point, that's when you get to the best stories.
We then collaborate towards data collection, and the individuals, let us know who's going to be in this data collection process. At Nakamale, we did individual interviews and focus groups. At Ho'oulu'aina, we did a learning circle, learning from each other, talking about concepts, beginnings, how they go about doing their program, what kind of concepts are important to them that they communicate to the individuals who come to the property.
And it wasn't always an interrogation process or a judgment process. It was like they really wanted to find out what was happening in our organization, what our challenges were.
We sit together as human beings, and we sit and we have conversations about who are you and who are we and how do we connect to these places. You know, that's the essence of Indigenous work or ways of doing things, is building the relationships. We listen and participate and listen and contribute and listen. And so a lot of it is listening.
I was very pleasantly surprised at how open the conversation has been and how much creativity and freedom and expression and time has gone into the discussion about evaluation process. But for me personally, the discussion of what we on this land, in this space, for this program, in this time frame, what are the stories that we need to be looking at, and what do we need to how do we need to elicit those stories, and how are we able to present those stories?
We begin the session by catching up, talking story. What's been happening in your life? What's happening down here? And then we move towards, well, what is the topic for today? What are we going to be discussing? Thanks so much for spending time with us, allowing us to talk to you. We really appreciate this.
You're welcome.
And first, we usually like to get to know each other, so we'll share something about ourselves, and as we go along, it's talking story, and we're using the camera primarily as a note-taking device. All of our conversations with individuals at each of these sites has been storytelling. Our hearing their stories, they're hearing our stories. And in the process, almost mutually constructing or understanding where they're coming from and what we, potentially have to share with them. We are not only interviewing people, taping them, looking at the tapes afterwards, discussing them, developing charts in which we put the main issues up. We're doing some situational mapping, which involves looking at the human and non-human elements. And then we're drawing out of that themes, important processes, which we can then list and then take a look at, take back to those that we've been working with to verify, to complete, to enhance the explanation of their processes. And taking a look at what evolved from the data up to this point and how they would like to use it. How would they like to have it presented? what were some of the major issues that came up that were strengths and others that may need improvement or more support from funders. We're collecting your stories, your manao, and we're taking a look at what are some of the main essences that we see. And so we're bringing that back to you to see what you think, if this represents what you're doing.
It's based on what you have written here for me to see that this is what I firmly believe. It takes more than just a language that was put into a written form. It takes people, just being people. But what is more important is that we treat the differences with the value, which was respect, ho'ihi, love, aloha.
One of the observations is that, in many respects, we are all in some sense structured and goal-orientated people. So, often they're sitting with us and they're looking for answers too, and they're looking at us for those answers. And what we try to say is, you've actually explained and given your solution. We just want to help you try to frame that in a way that your funding agencies have a sense of what it is that you're doing.
What do we do now from here?
That's a good question, because we've been sort of running along, we've met with you several times, we've gotten themes going, and I think at this point we want to bring those ideas together and come out with a product that also has some indicators, like we said, for this particular project. The tools that actually are developed are unique to or customized by those individuals who run the programs. Ho'oulu Aina, for example, is going to develop a multimedia type evaluation tool that will enable anyone who comes to their website to see the connection between the land and the people, the way in which both have benefited, the stories behind each of those participants as well as the areas on the land.
And so when we first sat down to tell our stories together, we understood that we were kind of birthing something. But we didn't know what it was. We were like, it could be something very simple. It could be a paper tool, a digital tool, a video tool. It could be anything. What is a tool? We talked at length about all kinds of options, all kinds of formats. We looked at mapping formats and the storytelling was the most important part. What I'm imagining in its physical manifestation is that you might click on a particular part of the ahupua'a and it will have the story of a particular group that planted a particular tree, and maybe within levels that tree will grow. The group will grow, the group will change, the tree will change, around the tree changes.
And I love that feeling, like seeing something that we planted, like knowing that once it starts growing, like a piece of my history is a part of this place's history.
It feels like you're the leader and you led that path, you made that path, and now others are following our path.
Within those images that can be produced are the stories from the children, what it meant for them to plant that tree, what it means for them to come visit that tree 2 years later, what it means, what the metaphor is for that. I'm a leader because I created a path. Like that's invaluable. But I cannot explain that. I can write that down in a survey form, but it doesn't make sense unless you can see the path, unless you can walk the path. I can create that walking in a digital format so that people can understand that the transformation of the community and the transformation of the land is not two separate things. They're interdependent. They're the same thing.
One of the things that Peter and I have talked about is that connection between the aina, the people, and the culture. and how in this process we're attempting to look at what is that connection for this program. How well are they connecting not only the participants but themselves and what they are doing to enhance sustainability in all areas.
So the essence of what we're doing is looking at the heart and soul of the relationships and the work they do. I mean, the program is what gives them the kind of structure. But I think what a lot of them are looking at is beyond the life of the program, you know, the generations to come. How will what we're doing impact the land in 7 generations time, and how will what they're doing with the keiki impact the next generation? So I think that that's something that we're working on, and that's why it's kind of like our products are really what they are committed to in the long term.
Thank you for allowing us to hear your stories, for trusting us with those stories,
and the important thing with what we're doing is we are building sustainable relationships, because this isn't just about research. This is about connecting at a community level, and in a very deep, significant, and respectful, sensitive way. That we're both committed ourselves to supporting the programs after the life of this evaluation.
I mean, it's okay to have an evaluator who comes and looks at your program and you have contact with them and then they go away. But it's another thing when someone comes in and you know they're going to be working with you professionally, but suddenly they remind you about things. They remind you about stuff that you may have always knew but you don't talk about. They remind you of things that you always thought but you were too scared to say. And it's also a learning issue about learning what else is going on out there in the world beyond the community that you're working in. And I think that having that relationship doesn't change the evaluation. I think it actually heightens it, because I think having someone who understands where you are at can help you improve the services that you're providing through their evaluation. And I think the story is fuller, richer, more detailed, and really helps the larger community to understand what it is you're really doing.
Kokua uka, kokua kai. Those of the upland, those of the shore. The deeper meaning of this Hawaiian proverb is the notion of mutual responsibility for each other and nature. Strengths Enhancing Evaluation Research embodies this mutual responsibility. It is both a culturally resonant process of empowering aina-based programs as well as a tool for delivering reliable evidence for funder decision-making, decisions that will actively support healthful relationships between people, culture, and the aina.